Dating in 2024 is already a challenging hill to climb, but imagine doing so as a virgin. Let's talk about that.
Dating as a virgin, it is just quite the odd, strange. I can't even put a word on it. It's quite an experience. So I just want to talk about my experience with that today. Before we go any further, I'm going to make a huge disclaimer and say that I will not be making any moral judgments on whether or not virgins are better than non-virgins. It's going to be me talking about my personal experiences when it comes to dating. But outside of that, I'm not casting any stones. Do what you want with your body. I do not care whatsoever. Feel free to share your thoughts and opinions. Just try not to get too passionate. So yeah, let's get into it. I looked at the viewfinder. So yeah, let's get into it. So first, I guess I can start this video by explaining why I think I'm still a virgin. There's no concrete answer to this. I'm still trying to figure it out. The first reason is that I am quite shy, insecure. My first instinct isn't to be comfortable in vulnerable and intimate situations. And it seems quite obvious, at least to me, that sex is such a vulnerable and intimate interaction with another human being. And so the thought just initially scares me. The thought of just getting naked and showing my body in front of somebody else. I used to do sports in high school, middle school, all that stuff. I was never that person who felt comfortable just changing out in the open. I still get pee shy to this day. Like when I go to the bathroom with my girl and they all like to cram in together, I will not be able to pee if they're in there and there's like no stalls. I don't know. There's just something about my body that seems so private and like I don't want others to really be able to see it in full detail and comment on it. I feel comfortable being naked in front of other people. Physically, metaphysically, it's just always shied away from sex because of that, because the thought of being naked and doing things on top of a man. I really need to have some level of trust with that person in order for me to feel comfortable with doing it. Another reason why
So I want to pause it for a second. She mentioned in there the struggle to, obviously the first reason of the comfortability, and it's just a very vulnerable thing. Would you say that is natural? I know that this is maybe a weird question to even ask, but again, we're considering this culture today. Like it is more than normal. Like being a virgin is almost a curse word in today's culture. Like it turns people away so fast. Would you say that her explaining that uncomfortability would be considered a natural thing instead of something that's really weird, out of pocket, and something that shouldn't be touched?
Yeah, this is interesting because she's close to your age, or maybe even
something around there, maybe.
Yeah, somewhere close, either slightly younger or maybe even slightly older. But first of all, I want to applaud her, but I do have one question. She made mention of being on top of a man. I don't even know how she would know that piece right there. But let me answer your question. So
fair enough.
Fair enough. Let me answer your question. I do think it's natural. Okay. I think that she should have those reservations now. And it's interesting because as she was speaking, I wrote down this part there. She said there's something about her body that seems so private. Guess what, Sean? She's absolutely right. God intended for your body, according to scripture, to be shared with your spouse. And so it should be with somebody that you're in a covenant with. It should be somebody who loves you, somebody who respects you, somebody who said that they want to spend their life with you, somebody who's made a commitment to you, right? And told you that. And it is in this place where that comfortability will start to emerge, because you will be connecting. Watch this. You won't just be having sex with somebody. You'll be making love with somebody who is your partner for your life. So you share everything. All the things that you share are in common. And so, yes, man, I would think that her saying, because I do believe later on in here, she talks about the fact that she grew up in a Christian household. So yes, she was taught the value of her body. She was taught the value of intimacy. She was taught the value of doing this in the appropriate context. So yes, anytime you go to violate that, it would be there. Now, the part that was interesting that she made mention of was that she said she was pee shy. I never heard that term before in my life. First time for everything. I was today years old when I heard that. Okay, so
that's a real thing.
Yeah, so this is very, very interesting in those particular contexts. So she also could have some other stuff, though, Sean, that might be going on with her, because I think that if you're just in a gym with a whole bunch of other girls and you guys are just showering, that's cool. I still think you can keep your stall closed, because when I was playing sports, we had a curtain that just closed on the stall type of deal or whatnot, so that you went in. And so, but also too, just to be fair, everybody's not comfortable with their body. She could just not be comfortable with her body in general. And there's so many things that are sexualized in today's culture. I could see where she also might have challenges in there. But in general, yeah, I think that she should have some reservations about her body being seen and known and still being a virgin right now with somebody who could use your body and then completely walk away from you and not care that you gave yourself to this person.
Yeah. I think it's really telling. I used to be that individual who would be afraid, or I used to think that if I were to share that information with somebody, it would automatically be such a turnoff that they would walk away if they would have known that I was a virgin. And it all came from perceived or conceived notions of what I thought they would think of me by me responding that way. And I just kind of learned along the way just how unique and separated that actually made me, due to how normalized and desacralized at that same rate sex has become in culture, man. And I think it just makes you unique in a lot of ways, something you won't hear often. But I think it's something that's necessary to hear. So let's keep watching. I think she's got some more thoughts to kind of unpack here.
Sure.
I think I'm still a virgin is because I have a religious upbringing. So I grew up in a traditionally Christian household. All of my parents were never particularly strict. So it's not like they necessarily pressured me into thinking you have to wait till marriage, like sex is a sin, like no casual sex, no nothing. They were not like that. But I think just growing up, going to church and hearing that stuff reiterated day in, day out, constantly being fed that at such an early age, I think it affected me. And for some reason, it just stuck with me. I think they call that Catholic guilt or something. I'm not Catholic. I don't necessarily read the Bible every day or that I pray all the time or anything like that. There are some values that have stuck with me from when I went to church and stuff. But now I'm not entirely sure what I would call myself. I guess you could say more spiritual. And even that term I'm not comfortable with. I think growing up in the church and sitting in the sanctuary and hear them lecture us about sex. See, I'm even uncomfortable saying it. Like, isn't that so pathetic? I literally go, sex. You are too old to be acting this way. Just hearing these conversations about sex and purity and waiting till marriage and abstinence and all of that stuff, I always just have this little feeling or voice in my head that's just like, you shouldn't do that. And then my psyche splits because then I hear another voice like, that's completely ridiculous. I talk to other people who've grown up in religious households. Most of them aren't religious and don't practice anymore. And yet they still share the same experience of being a little nervous and shy when it comes to sexuality. I also haven't had that many opportunities in dating, in relationships or anything with the opposite sex at all. I didn't get a chance to like even kiss a guy until like 3 years ago. Insane. But I promise you, like when it comes to dating, I just never had that opportunity. In high school, I was focused on school and I didn't really have any crushes on anyone. In college, I had my crushes, but the crushes were usually taken or already in relationships. So I just distracted myself, focused on school once again. And then once I came back home, I was focused on finding a job and rebuilding connections with the people I had here, focusing on friendships and things like that. I'm not in male-dominated spaces, so I work in boutique fitness, which is pretty much mainly just women, not around men often. And the only time I really do find myself engaging with them is when I go out to like bars and clubs on the weekends occasionally, and that's just not really where you want to meet the best of the best. So yeah, that's another reason is that I just haven't had that many experiences talking, dating, being with men in general. And now I'm going to get into
that. I think, okay, and I just want to pause that for a second. I can appreciate the honesty. Right? Like there's a lot of people who will say they are, celibate or virgin, but won't include why. Like as if they got stuff thrown at them all day and they just got the willpower. No. Now I'm not saying you can't get there. But I appreciate the honesty. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of people who say that and wear their virginity as a badge of honor, as if they are just the elite of the elite. And it can easily rub off in a way where they almost come off as if they're saying they're better than someone. However, I would suggest maybe it's more about making a better decision that's made them better off than others who have gone that route and it's hurt. Now, again, for me, I've mentioned this in previous episodes, your boy is a virgin, so I relate a lot to this video. When I first caught it, I was like, wow, somebody actually sharing this and hearing another story outside of my own that I've shared with others, that's refreshing. Like this is some refreshing content because I don't hear this often from other people. And the personal experiences. Me, I grew up in a setting where I wasn't allowed to date. I had a lot of family members who came in who had children at early ages. That just was one of many things that hunkered it down in the crib. So me dating, doing all that kind of stuff, never had it. First kiss, never had it. All those kinds of things. I was just never in that position earlier on, especially, throughout high school, those kinds of things. Again, and, when I went out into after high school, I started playing around, I felt like I was fear of missing out in a lot of ways. So I talked a big game. I acted as if I did. No one ever questioned it because I had the appearance. I was a tall guy. I played sports. There was just a lot of assumptions thrown my way that I had things that I didn't. I just let them live with it, because I didn't want them to think of me in a negative way by me saying the opposite of what they were assuming. And I think one thing that really pushed me to even stay in that was when I had an individual who had knew in freshman year of high school who just basically assumed that I was gay because I didn't do what a lot of other guys in my class did. They didn't see me holding hands with a girl, hugging on girls, dropping them off at class, talking about sex stories, all that kind of stuff. So they just assumed that. And that easily crept in my mind. So I was like, well, if she thinks that, I don't know who else does. So I need to put myself in an environment where that can't even be a thought. And so I started talking a lot more like them, moving a lot more like them. And I did a lot outside of actually engaging sexually with a woman in that way. And it was definitely something that, as I've looked back on, was definitely a flaw and an issue, but something I've overcome. But even in the process of dealing with all that, there was something in me that still was screaming to me, this is something I shouldn't be doing. Yeah. This is something that I don't need to be doing. Yeah. And I want to value somebody enough to where they do not have to show me their body or give me their body in order to be valuable to me. I share this because I think there's a big message that I want you guys to stick around to the end to, because I really want to land with it. To be on the inside of somebody and for however length of time that is occurring, and then to separate for whatever reason. I don't know if I can handle that. I can't.
It's not as long as all the dudes be telling you.
That, and I do mean like in terms of long-term relationship too. Right? Like having a relationship where that's repetitive, and then all of a sudden they get up and leave and they tell you they don't love you anymore or they're not feeling you anymore. And I've had people and talk to people who have experienced this, and my heart aches for them because you gave literally all you could.
Yeah, that's the most of you that you could.
That's give. All you could give, and most they intimate. Still said no. And you question your identity, you question who you are, and it wrecks you to unimaginable places. And so I just can't imagine that. But yeah, I would agree. Yeah, no, it definitely isn't what porn actually kind of programs your mind to do. And to think that sex is like, for sure.
She said something in there that's really important, and I'll be brief. She's conflicted. She's conflicted about what she's heard. She's heard truth. She lived around truth. Apparently her parents practiced truth, and maybe they were like, hey, listen, we gave you enough truth that we're going to let you decide whether what you heard is something that you should live by. So her conflict, I believe, is, even though she said she's not in those spaces regularly and that she's more in female spaces, but that, she went to college and the people that she had a crush on, she kind of shifted. She made some adjustments and changes. But the reality of the situation is that I believe that she has a conflict, man, in her heart, scripturally, spiritually speaking. That's a real struggle for her right now, because so she's in a culture and she keeps hearing messages from this culture, but she's like, yo, like that doesn't really match where I'm trying to go, though, right? And so I think that makes her uncomfortable too, because perhaps she even has friends or other people that are having these conversations about their sex lives, right? And stuff like that. And then she's maybe too, I think another part of the conflict is she might be thinking, Sean, too, is there something actually wrong with me?
Right.
That no man has never been like, yo, let me, what's up? Let me holler at you. Let me get that. So I think that she has a conflict between the base foundation of who she is and how she's grown up. Because then she tried to say, well, I wouldn't necessarily say I read my Bible or pray every day, but I'm probably more spiritual. Then she immediately said, but I'm not really comfortable with that. To me, it's all tension. She's just she's like in an internal conflict with herself. And I feel like she's trying to figure out, like, where do I actually go with all of this stuff that I feel? And instead of her leaning into it and gathering herself good women around her, good teachers and role models, and asking questions about it, she's talking about it, which is a good thing. It's a good thing, because she's going to be helping somebody else out there who's
1,000%
a virgin like you or like herself, which again, I applaud both of you. I think it is an amazing thing. And anybody on there who watches this, who's like, man, I don't think it's amazing to be a virgin. Listen, this whole ideal of like, that's why you got to test drive the car before you buy it. First of all, the person isn't a car. This isn't an animate object. This is an individual. This is a human being. This is somebody's son, somebody's daughter, right? And a lot of you won't understand this until you have your own children. You don't want somebody coming and using your child for their pleasure only to say, well, it was just a thing, whatever, whatnot. Because if you're a father and you're the one who has to pick up the pieces of your daughter, while some dude took and ravaged and ran through her, you might be saying, well, that's her bad, so on and so forth. That's the problem with young men today. Have enough respect for yourself to make sure that you're paying attention to these types of things, right? Where you wouldn't even make a comment like that. So my point is I do think that she is really struggling, man, with her faith and what it has informed her of, and how she's supposed to live in a culture and society that's over sexualized as it is.
Yeah, and I would encourage her, if she ever catches this, or anyone else who may be in the position, I would much rather you be alive in that tension than be struggling to find peace because you've got so many people in and out of you. I would much rather you be in the tension of where you are spiritually in dealing with what you're hearing in culture versus what you've been taught versus what you're discovering to be truth, than have so much other weight added onto your life because of how many people you have been connected to in a sexual experience that's deeper than the physical experience you had in that moment. Because it's so much deeper than that. And again, stick to the end, because I got a really good thought that I landed with, even in hearing this, I think is encouraging, even to those of you who may have been in those positions where compromising is something that you did, and maybe you're facing a lot of guilt and shame because of it, and you don't necessarily share the same testimony as others who have yet to do it and have a lot of regret about it. I think it's something that you're going to benefit from. So let's kind of wrap up here, because she's going to walk into one last point that I think is beneficial to the story.
Do it.
As a virgin. First of all, I didn't know, or maybe I just didn't expect most people to be turned off when they hear that I'm a virgin. I know what people say. They say, you don't need to.
I heard that. I'm gonna just pause that, bro. I heard that. How many people have turned away? Just start looking at you crazy and then walk the other way. That's just a sign that they ain't for you. Just keep it moving.
Share that stuff when you're dating, or you should hold that off for a later time, or you don't even have to tell them that you're a virgin, like it's none of their business. And that's not why I'm telling them. The reason that I tell them is usually because I'm asked about it. In the first 3 days, the topic of sexual intimacy and compatibility is going to come up. Either they're expecting sex to happen soon. That is crazy that I do that with that word. And the second thing is that I know on my end from jump that since I'm a virgin, I cannot just have sex. Like, I'm putting a number on it. When the first couple of dates, I can't do that. I wouldn't feel comfortable. I think we've already discussed my issues with vulnerability and intimacy, and that for me to engage in such an activity, I need to stable some sort of trusting, loving relationships where I feel comfortable with sharing that part of myself with them. And I know that from jump that they don't. And the last thing I want to do is waste people's time, because not everybody wants to commit before having sex, which I totally understand. Conversation has to be brought up. Otherwise, we both end up wasting each other's time, so to speak. Just going on a couple of dates and then it just doesn't go anywhere. In my experience, I can honestly say that I am shocked at the reactions that I get when I tell people I'm a virgin. So usually they're just like, oh, are you like waiting for marriage or something? Then they get turned off and ghost me, because once they hear committed relationship and it's like the second date, I understand them being like, pump your brakes. Not interested in that. One dude actually told me, he was like, so what's wrong with you? Like, because you're not ugly. He's like, what's really wrong with you? Is your personality? And I'm like, what? No, I hope not. And then we have the typical cocky guy that's like, oh, you're gonna get attached. You're gonna get attached. That's why I can't pursue this anymore, because I don't need you clinging on after we do it, since it's your first time. It'll be so emotional. Which I guess a part of that is kind of true, but also relax. Most of y'all don't know what y'all doing. No way. So
Hey.
Oh,
She's telling the truth, though. She's telling the truth.
Accurate.
Though.
She's accurate. She's accurate.
She's telling the truth. Most of y'all, let me say this, Sean, before you say it. Let me say this to all of the guys out there watching who are like, man, I'll do this, that, and the other. Most of y'all don't know what y'all doing. Amen. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, bro. Yeah, and you could, it's so crazy. You know, I've heard all throughout my life, pull out game strong. It's on time. Ain't got no kids, ain't got no baby. I'm like, bro, come on, dog. You're not really rocking like that. Do you know, this is actually a good time to insert this statistic, that I believe it's well over 67% of women, I think 67, it might be actually in the 70% range, say that they experience bad sex, and that the O gap, right, orgasm gap, all that kind of stuff is very alive and well. Like, most women will tell you they have experienced very few to no, more so on the no, orgasms. And so it's like they're experiencing bad sex, and it's infiltrated with the mind of porn, playing a huge role in the minds of men and people and young people who think that sex is supposed to be so vigorous and so egregious and so wild and ridiculous. And so because they aren't doing what your fantasy is encouraging you should be done, you now think that they aren't either doing their job or it's not worth it. You begin bailing. Again, it's like that whole experience she describes is very real. And I think something that I've learned, again, when you learn to value who you are, your standards, your values, what you stand for, all those kinds of things, you're willing to allow so many people to tell you no for that right yes. And a part of experiencing those no's are people who will leave you because you don't do what they're hoping you would do for them in such a space. And especially without a level of commitment. If you think you finna get, man, listen, if you think you finna get that and not have a ring, come on, bro. Like, that's, to me, that's a no-go. If you can wait, I'll say this last thing. If you can wait all your life up to this point without it, you can make it to marriage.
Mm-hmm.
If you can make it a week, you can make it 90 days. If you can make it 90 days, you can wait 9 months. If you can wait 90 days and 9 months, you can wait till the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that is worth encouraging, because there's so much value attached to who you are. Not everybody is supposed to have access to you like that. You are too specific. You are too unique. You are too special to allow people to have access to you to such a degree that they now have power to drop you and break you in a manner that happens in such a way. You got too much value, way too much.
So I was messing with the men, but I'm totally serious. Young men,
Thundercats,
young
thoroughbreds.
Yeah. Having sex and making love to a woman are two totally different things. And when you have a woman who's your partner for life, the way you deal with her, the way you treat her, doesn't look anything like what you see on one of them videos you be sneaking and watching. It's a completely different connection. The connection is different altogether. And knowing your purpose in that level of a relationship is incredibly important. But I applaud the young lady. I think that she should stay a virgin until she gets married. And she already made mention of it. Just hearing all the stupid stuff some of the young men say, "Oh, you attached, girl." Like, bruh, like, for real though, calm down, man. You can't even hit the stand-up potty straight, right? So relax with all that. Truthfully, man, I believe this. I believe that God has ordained intimacy for the marriage relationship, and both of those people are to discover how to connect with one another, and how to be with one another and be in pleasure with one another in that. And that's the beautiful thing about getting married as a virgin. Both people get to explore that together, learn that together, be in that together in a very healthy and God-honoring way.
Yeah, I love that. And we've had our conversations even after sharing this, just talking about how impactful it is to be able to walk into that as fresh with one another as possible. We know in today's culture, especially if you're dating and you're in that position of being a virgin, I wouldn't necessarily say don't expect or have such a standard to where, hey, I need somebody who doesn't have that. Now, again, I will say that you want to have those conversations openly and be candidly about it, right? Not necessarily asking how many bodies they have in comparison, but really wanting to know, okay, do I have the capacity to journey with this person with how much experience they've had to be able to handle me properly, and for me to be able to, obviously walk into this space knowing what's, potentially at risk, but more importantly, of course, health wise. All right, like, am I safe? Is this safe here? Right.
Sure.
And you have the right to know those things,
Sure.
and not walk into that blindly.
Sure.
But and we've had our conversation again on my channel. I'll link in the description. We kind of talked about body counts as a part of a stream that we did a while back. And we raised the question, how many bodies is too much for men? And we kind of unpacked that, but we kind of landed at a very unique space where there are some people, man, who may have a 0 body count and be a virgin, but their character, nasty. Who they are as an individual, nasty. And it doesn't matter necessarily the body count in that space, because you can't even put up with them and live with them, do life with them, and really make room for them to journey. And so, and then you have, obviously, well, dang, nobody really wants necessarily to wrestle with just the weight of all these sexual experiences and that being brought into the marriage and weight of expectations on you, for sure. But I think there's room to say, man, there are some people who have transformed, man, who have really transformed for the better in Christ, in relationship to him, and who have decided to dedicate their body back to to God in a way where they're honoring who they are, where they are, and they have done the work to be able to handle a committed relationship with someone and, you know, actually enjoy that space for what it was designed to be, you know, in marriage, enjoyed the way God intended.
Yeah.
And it's something to really honestly weigh and consider when you're having conversations with people and encountering them in this dating space. Because, man, it, you know, city girls, hot girl summer, it's wild out here. Like it just is. And you got to be mindful of the people that you're encountering and you're allowing into such a space, and set that standard and stand on it. You know what I'm saying? Set that standard and stand on it. Because I promise you, the person that is willing to wait is the person that is more considerable for such a role than somebody who is continuously pushing against that boundary to for you to give up your body, both man and woman. Like it's not worth it. And again, I speak to the value you have. I don't speak to the idea of shaming sex, because sex was never designed to be shamed. It was something
Correct.
designed
That's
to be
true.
enjoyed. It is God's creation.
In the appropriate context.
In the appropriate context, man. God created your, like, you get horny as a single individual. Like, that's natural, fam. Like, don't hate on yourself. Like, man, I shouldn't be feeling this. No, you're a human being. You saw something that was attractive, and your emotions, you got hot. Like, yes, that's natural. It's about stewarding it, however, to where we're willing to honor, man. When you get married, your spouse is going to enjoy that.
Yeah.
Enjoy that, and
so will you,
and so will you, and so you want to steward that and look at it as a stewardship opportunity. The person that I'm going to marry, man, we're going to have a ball, and it's going to be not because of the initial activity itself, but because of the meaning behind it, the love that you create, the connection that you have, the family that comes from it, everything, because you know one another on such a deeper level than the surface. A lot of us like to build off of sex, but really sex and physical intimacy needs to be the smallest box that could be the cherry on top, but it's not necessarily as required as the spiritual component, as the mental capacity, as the purpose journey and what aligns there. There's so much more to that, because there's so much more to you, and there's so much more to other people that you encounter. I want to end with this, because some of you might be watching this too, and you may be listening to all this and you're like, man, shoot, well, that sounds dope. Good for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I guess, you know, virginity, woohoo, 2024. But like, bro, I'm not there. Maybe you're a man and woman. I'm not there. I have had sexual encounters. I've compromised. Perhaps there's some events that have happened where you didn't really have a say in those things, and it was a really horrible thing for you, and a lot of that was taken from you. And it's a really, really difficult thing to process. And you hear these things, and you might have a lot of guilt and shame that's built up in you because you regret maybe compromising, and you regret how that was something you were willing to give up in the relationship. Now that the relationship is no longer what you thought it would be, you convinced yourself it would be marriage, you convinced yourself it would go the long haul, and then it ended up not going there. And in the process of that, your body was given up. And I think it happens more often than we realize. And this is never going to be a space where you are scrutinized, shamed, or guilted. You need to come into the comment section and you need to pronounce to the whole church what you like. No, that's not how we move. And I think what's really important that and this hit me so hard when I watched this, and I made a video on it. And I think it's relevant here. I know you feel as if, because of some of the decisions you made in those relationships and connections, that it's either too late for you, or that you can't come back from it, or that you're perhaps afraid to make a decision for yourself again regarding relationships. Because look at the train and the previous relationship decisions I made, and look at where it got me. I don't trust myself anymore. I don't trust my own decision making, and therefore I don't trust that I can genuinely do what needs to be done in a relationship to honor it the best way and honor myself in the process. I really want to encourage you that God can redeem your bad decisions.
100%.
God is a redeemer through and through. He did not just come to redeem you for eternity. He also came to redeem those moments and areas in your life that time was lost, where opportunities were perhaps compromised because of the moment, because of the opportunity that presented itself, where self-control may not have necessarily been tapped into as much. And maybe things got hot and it was just the moment and you went all in, and it happened maybe numerous times, not just one time. I just want to encourage you that God can redeem. And even though you may not feel as if you're in a position to make the greatest decisions towards your relationships, of course, there's so many applicable things that we could talk about to build that trust for yourself and in your own decision making. But ultimately, I want you to get to the place of trusting the authority and sovereignty of God. God is outside of time. And because God is outside of time, even though there are some decisions you're making today that, yes, can carry consequences, it does not mean that those consequences can hinder you from still experiencing God and experiencing what God may desire for your life, even if that's marriage, even if that's a healthy connection and relationship that you may not have seen growing up in your own home with your parents, those kinds of things, maybe previous heartbreaks and relationships that you did not expect to end the way it did, and you compromised in those areas. God has a way. I'm reminded of Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to them who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose. And so I know that there is so much that you feel you've lost and so much that you feel you cannot trust within yourself. But I want you not to trust yourself. I want you to get to the place of trusting God. Trust how God communicates to you. Trust how the relationship with God is cultivated with you in these spaces to continue honoring him. And in the process, you're going to begin to earn and grow in that confidence to trust the decision-making that you have, but not because it comes from a fleshly place, because you are able to discern, okay, this is something that's God honoring, and this is something that may not be as God honoring. Therefore, I can make a better decision that reflects my values, reflects where I stand, reflects who I want to be, and make room for people who can support me and have the capacity to journey with me to who I'm becoming. God can redeem. And because God can redeem, you may lack a lot of trust for yourself, but you do not have to lack trust in the direction that God is taking you, in who he has designed you to be, in who he is giving you room to become in him and through him, because he will do so much more in you than you can ever do for him. And so it's not too late. I want you to recognize that God is greater than your heart, and you do not have to be weighed down by that guilt and shame. It happened, but now that you have an opportunity to make different decisions, now that you know better, you can do better. And I'm encouraging you that I know you have it in you to do better. I know that you have it in you to be better. And I know that you have it in you to be able to journey this process healthily in a way that reflects God, honors God, and he has a way of blessing you beyond belief. And there is somebody out here, even though you have a past, even though you have previous encounters, you are not damaged goods. You are not so damaged that you are unavailable for marriage, relationship, and love again. And you have an opportunity because of how the Creator sees you, because he's the one that's established value in you. He says that you have room and opportunity to continue pursuing him and being available for what he has for you. And there's no past that disqualifies you from what God has for you in your future. And I choose to believe that for you, even if you aren't able to see it in this current moment. And so I just wanted to land the plane with that encouragement, because that guilt and shame can really weigh on you. But you, even though your past does not disqualify you from what God has in store for you, you might have some consequences. You might have some real life things you might have to navigate for sure. But that doesn't mean that you're no longer available for what God has for you. And I hope that lands well with some of you, and sparks a little bit of a flicker of hope for where you are. PD, if you got anything, man. All right. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into this video. Shout out to Home Skillet Biscuit, homegirl that made this video. Extremely proud of you for, first of all, being vulnerable to do that. That's an amazing step. Not a lot of people do that. And for that, I commend you, and I commend you for upholding the virginity, no matter where you are in it and your reasons for it. And I encourage you to continue holding out until marriage to that right person says yes, because that's when a lot of the experiences that you can have will be maximized and honored in so many ways with the person that you choose to experience that with for the rest of your life in a covenant in marriage. And I encourage that 1000%. You got it in you. I appreciate you sharing that. And to the rest of you, hope this lands well with you. If you like this kind of content, you want to see more, subscribe, like this video, share this with a friend who could benefit from hearing a conversation like this, and comment below any takeaways, any thoughts that you have in relation to this video. And we will see you in our next conversation. And until then, be easy and be breezy. Peace.
Peace.